I don't know if David said or not. Ready to go?
Give us the
All right, it's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Invite everyone to please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Jim Dombeck.
Here.
Steve Nelson.
Here.
James Shiloh.
Here.
Julene Davy. Here. Jeff Jacobson.
Here.
Eric Jones.
Present.
Christian Wren. Here. Quorum's present.
I'd like to make a change to the agenda. After Board Spartan Awards, to add in a new section 4, which would be Return to Learning Part 1. And then that would increase the numbers by 1 for the rest of the agenda. And we'll keep, will be item 8.02, which is Return to Learning Update. We'll make that Return to Learning Update Part 2. The reason for the change is that there have been some recent pronouncements that have come to light in the last 2 days that have, I think, a very large bearing on where we're going and might even have a bearing on what people might want to speak about. So we're going to hopefully address that before we welcome people to comment. So are there any other changes to the agenda as proposed? Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Wren.
Yes.
Shiloh.
Yes.
Davy.
Yes.
Dombeck.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, the next item is Board Spartan Awards, and this is the evening when we recognize our young author winners. And the superintendent has agreed to help me out by presenting the awards. And we'll do that up front, and if our award winners would come to the microphone when they're called. And our first winner tonight that we want to salute is Lillian Fowler. Lillian is in the first grade, and her winning story is Chelsea's first day of first grade. And Lillian, I wonder, would you tell us a little bit about your story?
So me and my neighbor always play together, like outside. And we play together in person in school at recess. So I did that in my book because me and my neighbor are always together.
So you wrote what you knew about, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great story, and it talks about a girl named Chelsea.
Yes.
Is that you?
Yes, and my neighbor is
Isabella?
yes.
Okay. And Chelsea meets Isabella. She's a new student.
Yes.
And they become friends.
Yes.
And then they have a problem. What's the problem that they have?
So 2 third graders bully them, and then Isabella helps Chelsea out to fix the problem.
Yeah, Max and Alex are kind of mean to the girls.
Yeah.
And then use your problem-solving skills. Isn't that what
Yes.
what the teacher says in the book, Mrs. Charlie?
Yes.
And how do they use their problem-solving skills?
They say, please stop, and they go to their teacher. They're walking down the hall. It happened 2 times in my book.
That's right. Excellent. It was a great story. I enjoyed it very much. Who's your teacher?
Mrs. Doty?
Okay, and we thank her, we salute her. And then, are your mom and dad here?
Yes.
we want to have them stand up and get some recognition, too. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Superintendent Wilder has an award for you. Photo op. The next winner that we'd like to salute is Louise Smith. And Louise is in 3rd grade, and her story is called My Life as a Pencil. And I have to say, I learned a lot of things about pencils when I read your story. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
Well, my story is about a pencil who has a bunch of friends, and he gets kidnapped by a girl and taken home, and then gets returned to his friends.
Mm-hmm. Some of the things that I learned in this book is that pencils talk,
Yes.
but people can't hear them.
Mm-hmm.
Only other pencils can hear them, right?
Yes.
And then I learned that pencils can dance,
They can.
and they like to dance, right?
Yes.
And then I learned that pencils like to be sharpened.
They do. Except Max.
And they don't like to be used, though.
They
Now,
don't.
why is that?
Because it makes them dull.
That's right. So this is a story about a pencil who is owned by a young lady. It says the lady who's writing, the young girl who's writing the story.
Mm-hmm.
So is that your pencil?
Yes.
Okay. And the pencil screams when the young girl starts to write the story. He doesn't like it because pencils don't like to be used.
Yes.
And so she puts down the pencil, though, and he gets to spend some time with his pencil friends.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that there's a pencil dance, the snowflake dance.
Yes.
And so he is asked to the snowflake dance by a girl pencil, and all their friends go to the dance, and because it's snowing outside, they go outside for the dance, right?
Yes.
And then what happens?
The little girl is walking up, and they all run inside, and then she goes and picks up Max and takes him home, and then she writes a story with him and then returns him back to the school to get him sharpened.
Yeah, but before she returns him back to the school, she puts him in a box
Yes, she does.
for 2 years, right? And so he's kind of lonesome. He doesn't even get to see the daylight because he's in that box. And when she takes him back to school, she takes him to the pencil sharpener, and what happens there?
She sharpens him,
And
and then she puts him back by Gloria, the girl pencil.
by all his friends. All his friends are still there, and he's kind of amazed that they're still there, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this was a great story, and like I say, I learned a lot of things about pencils that I didn't know. I'll never pick up a pencil now without thinking that they can talk. I don't know, can pens talk too? You'll have to tell me that later. That's a sequel, I guess. Who's your teacher?
Mrs. Lind.
And so we want to give her a salute and thank her. And are your parents here with you?
My mom.
Your mom's here? Well, we want to... Thank you very much, and congratulations, and that was a wonderful story, and we hope you continue to write.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Photo op.
Photo op again. I should say that these stories are illustrated by the authors as well, and the illustrations are quite nice. When the pencil is locked in the box for 2 years, it gets really long hair. Our next young author that we want to honor is Grady Janish.
That about right, Grady?
And Grady is in the 4th grade, and the name of his story is The Championship Closer. You want to tell us a little bit about the story?
So in the beginning of the book, I try out for pitching for baseball, and I don't do very good. And then so I keep on practicing, and people help me and say I'm good at the middle of the book. Then I have a practice, and we're testing out pitchers, and then that practice gets canceled. And then the game is the championship game, and then it was tied at the end of the game, and I get to pitch, and I do really good, and we win the game.
Yeah, and you get a big trophy, 3 feet tall. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the story was all about you? Mm-hmm. Is it a true story?
Kind of,
Sort of?
kind of not.
Good, that's the best kind of story, I think. I really enjoyed this story, and it reminded me of what happens so many times in baseball, and that is it comes down to the last innings. And in this case, the championship game, your team is ahead by 1 run, mm-hmm. and it's the bottom of the 9th inning, and the coach all of a sudden says, Grady, you're pitching, right?
Yeah.
And without ever having tried out, the only tryout you had was that first tryout, and you kind of bombed it. Mm-hmm. They said second base for you, right? Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. But then they noticed that your arm was, I believe the quote was, that your arm was canned heat from second base. Which I thought was a really great description. But then, so you're called in without really any experience, and it's the last inning, and you're ahead by 1 run, and it's the heart of the other team's lineup. It's all their heavy hitters.
Yeah.
And you're able to do pretty well. The first hitter grounds out or lines out to second, mm-hmm. but your second baseman is injured. And then there's a substitute second baseman who comes in for him. So it's his first game too at second base. And you get a home run hitter who's up, and you are pitching to the home run hitter, and he hits a shot to second base. And everybody on the team is holding their breath and hoping that this guy who's the substitute is going to do his job. Mm-hmm. And he does. Mm-hmm. And so now it's down to you, the last out, 1 run ahead, and their biggest home run hitter comes up. Mm-hmm. You throw some heat right on the outside corner, strike 1. Mm-hmm. Do it again, strike 2. Let one go, it goes right over the center of the plate. You didn't want it to go there, and it's going. It's foul. Mm-hmm. So then, last pitch, or you're hoping it's the last pitch, and you're telling yourself what?
I can do this.
Uh-huh. And so what do you do with that last pitch?
Throw it in the corner, I think.
Yep, you threw a change up. And so here you were throwing heat the whole time, so he's ready to swing hard and fast. You throw a change up, he swings and misses. He was way ahead of the ball. So your team wins, and then you get the trophy. So that's great. Congratulations. This is also a very nicely illustrated book or story. Who's your teacher? Great.
Mrs. Tucker.
Okay, we want to give her a salute. And your parents are here, I believe. We'd like to have them stand up and get some applause. So now you have your photo up.
I think he's a year ahead of him.
Well, congratulations, Grady, and keep on riding. Next young author we want to honor is Aaliyah Gallegos. Is she not here? Okay. Aaliyah is in the 8th grade. She was a winner last year as well, so she is quite an accomplished writer. This was a great story, just truly very well written, and it's very interesting in the sense that it ends very abruptly. It leaves you wanting more, which I guess is a great writing style to have. But it's about two young individuals who are arguing between themselves, really. One of them wants to go to a rally, and one of them wants to go to a rainbow rally, and the other one says, no, I don't want you to go. And that's because she's afraid that her girlfriend is going to be injured if she goes to this rally. And it's about the dynamics of the relationship. It's about how they kind of fight with each other, but how at one point they realize, or at least the one who doesn't want the other to go realizes that she's going to go anyway. So at that point in time, she says, well, go, but be safe. I love you. Make sure you come back. Be very careful. Promise me you're going to be careful. The other girl goes to the rally and participates in the rally. And as she's participating in the rally, the story ends with gunshots being fired and someone behind her yelling that they're shooting at us, get down, and then it just says that she turned around, and it just doesn't tell you what would actually happen. So really leads to, I think, the opportunity for another story, or two or three. So again, congratulations to all our young author winners, but anybody who participated in the contest is really a winner. And I encourage all of our students who entered young authors to continue to write, and hopefully we'll be honoring you sometime in the future. And for those who didn't enter, I think that it's a great exercise. It's a great way to build your skills, and it's a great way to find out just whether you have talent in writing or not. You may not have that self-confidence, but when you enter the contest, hopefully you'll find that. So again, thanks to all our young author winners, and let's give them a round of applause. Next item then would be new item 4.01, Return to Learning, Part 1.
going to fast forward through my slides and start with this one. It was a busy day, but it was a great day because we received some news from the state that we've been waiting for a long, long time. I've been a superintendent for 11 years, and last year has been one of the most difficult, I think, of any superintendent's career. We've all looked for the light at the end of the tunnel to get a little bit closer and a little bit closer. And that happened today. So we got some really positive news, and glad to share that with the board and the community tonight. So there have been increasing requests for health officials to review the 6-foot rule for social distancing and the impact on schools from around the state. So I know that superintendents across the state that I've spoken with through the Superintendents Association, this has been the biggest challenge to reopening schools and getting students in person. So one of the things we've done in anticipation of the spring and next year is just push health officials for a little bit more guidance, a little bit more clarity, and asking them to review that. We are not the only group or organization that's done that. It's come from multiple groups within the multiple communities within the state. There was, and I didn't want to share this on purpose because I didn't know how long that might take, but there were some kind of rumors that the state was willing to look at that and consider that, and in fact, that's exactly what they did. So this morning about 11:30, that request was heard, and the Illinois Department of Public Health released a revised 20-page document that updated safety guidance for schools. In all fairness, because today was a busy day, I've not had a chance to go through that document with a fine-tooth comb. There's a lot of information in there, revised guidance. It supersedes previous guidance from the IDPH. So anything that was issued before, if there's any conflict, this becomes the rules to follow. It addresses a variety of topics, the most prominent of which was changing the guidance for social distancing from 6 feet to 3 feet. There were some stipulations about that. For example, some of the staff who have not been vaccinated, who have chosen not to be vaccinated, and of course we respect that. There's still guidance that requires us to provide that 6 feet of distance between staff and unvaccinated staff and other individuals. But for students, it allows them to be 3 foot apart from each other instead of 6 feet apart. So this is obviously a game changer for all schools, including ours. This is a long-awaited, positive step for students and their families, staff, and our community because it takes us one step closer to normal. We've been planning for a full return. I'll talk about this a little bit more. Assuming that would maybe come in the fall, hoping that it might come sooner than that, and this new guidance gives us the opportunity to consider doing that a lot sooner. The new guidance also reflects the actions of our community, as well as communities around the state who have taken that guidance and taken the measures to be safe and to move closer to ending the pandemic. So all the communities across the state of Illinois really deserve a pat on the back for doing what needed to be done and really doing some difficult things, distancing themselves from each other, from family members and friends. But our numbers, which I'll talk about a little bit later, continue to be very favorable, both in Region 1 as well as in our county. There may be a small spike coming because there was one day about a week ago that we saw an increase, but when you take that 7-day rolling average, the numbers still continue to be good. And that's led to the IDPH, I think, really reconsidering the guidance for schools. So following today's announcement, I was telling Chris before the meeting, I got my steps in today, did a lot of talking with folks around the district. I contacted members of our administrative team as well as SCA leadership to discuss the impact of that revised guidance. It was unexpected. We hoped it would come at some point, but it was unexpected this morning. So it took a lot of conversation just to kind of check in with everybody and see what we thought the impact was going to be. I'm pleased to report that a plan for full return has been ongoing for quite some time. What we didn't have was the clarity that we got today in terms of social distancing and that guidance being changed. This guidance helps us take the final steps in developing those plans. So based on conversations that I had with the administrative team across the district today, as well as SCA leadership, here's what I'm recommending to be the next steps. Implementation of the extended day model on Monday, March 15th. We did consider looking to implement a full return sooner than that, but I think for a variety of reasons, I don't think that's wise to do it immediately. One of the reasons is that we were prepared to do that already, and any designation changes made by families last week were based on that plan. And while we all know that there are a lot of folks who want school to be in session more, I also know, based on emails and communication that I've had from other folks within the community, that there are parents that are not comfortable with that. And if we change, when we change to a full return with a remote option, which I'll talk about here in just a minute, I do believe that there are families that are going to want to have the opportunity to review what that plan looks like in a little bit more detail, and then have the opportunity to decide whether or not they want their student to remain hybrid, or possibly to move them back to remote for the remaining part of the school year. I think we owe it to the community to allow them the opportunity to do that. The next step would be then to finalize and communicate the details of the full return with a remote option next week, and then allow parents to reconsider students' designation for the remainder of the year based on that information. Step after that would be to make any necessary final arrangements and plan to implement a full return with a remote option in early April. While the full return planning has been ongoing, we thought that was a little bit farther out. I was impressed with the work of our admin team after having conversations with them today, that full return plan was really pretty fairly developed. But there are still some holes that need to be filled, and I would say one of those things that needs to be done is still some coordination across the district among the schools, but also in terms of transportation, food service, and facilities and other things. We think we can implement that plan fairly early in April, but we need a little bit more time to finalize everything. And again, I think we owe it to parents to give them an opportunity first to see what the full return plan looks like, and then give them an opportunity to decide whether or not they want to move their student from remote to hybrid or hybrid to remote. The other complication in there is that we have spring break the week after next. So we'll implement the extended day plan on Monday as planned, have a week for spring break, be able to announce any changes, what the full return plan with that remote option looks like, give families an opportunity to look at that, have conversations at home, and then tell us whether or not they want to stay remote or hybrid or make a change. So I don't have an established date for that. I do have a meeting with the administrative team tomorrow, where I hope that we can finalize the date and get that announced, and then start to announce details of what a full return will look like. I do anticipate that it's likely that a full return is still going to be a Monday to Thursday full return, because I do anticipate that we're going to have a significant portion of our families that still opt for their students to be remote. And that Friday will continue to be as critical for the remainder of this school year as it was up to this point. But that will be up for discussion as well as other facets of the plan. So we'll continue to do that. We'll start with that tomorrow in hopes that we can get final details out as quickly as we can so that families have an opportunity to see that. One of the things I'll add here before I move on is that the Return to Learn plan was published on the district website. And as part of that plan, there is a link for frequently asked questions. So as those questions are coming in, we're reviewing them, we're responding to them, and we're posting responses to those questions. And we'll continue to do that as details of a full return with that remote option become available. So some of the questions I got today, I got several questions today, but one of them had to do with what the remainder of the school year would look like after we implement a full return. And in order to maintain as much consistency for the remainder of the school year, and because I don't expect any additional significant changes to safety guidance, I don't foresee any further changes to the instructional model for the remainder of the current school year. So once that full return is completely developed, it's announced, we give parents an opportunity to consider that and let us know whether or not they'd like to make a change. We'll implement that plan, but I think it's really important for the remainder of this school year to be as consistent as we can for until the end of the school year. We will continue to plan for next year, and we'll have an opportunity to include any lessons learned this spring from the full return once it's implemented. One of the things that I think is also important is that currently we do our best to keep everybody, staff and students, 6 feet apart. Any positive COVID case creates the contact tracing that occurs. And anybody who's a close contact to a positive case, anybody who's within 6 feet for an accumulation of 15 minutes within a 24-hour period becomes a close contact and then becomes involved in the contact tracing. Because we're going to start to see students a little bit closer than that 6 feet. A positive COVID case could have a little bit broader implications in the future than it does right now, and for a variety of other reasons, one of which is that the plan released by IDPH today was very clear that other safety protocols need to continue to be monitored, especially things like face masking. So we'll continue to implement those. Our staff has done a phenomenal job of supervising that and reinforcing that with students, and we'll continue to need to be vigilant in order to avoid, a positive COVID case, really wreaking any sort of havoc in any of our schools. That'll have an impact at any level, elementary, middle school, or high school, but I think because students change classes at the middle school and high school, probably potentially broader implications. But for a variety of reasons, I would ask the community to continue to be vigilant, face mask, keep your distance, although here in school that's going to be 3 feet as opposed to 6 feet. Wash your hands regularly, use hand sanitizer. We'll continue to clean and disinfect in schools like we have been. Custodial and maintenance staff have done a phenomenal job. We'll continue to do that. And I think that's the last slide I have. Yeah, I'll come back to some of this information later, but this was kind of what I would refer to as breaking news that was released this morning. A lot of conversation this afternoon and planning even into the evening before the meeting started. But at this time, I would welcome any questions that the board has about what I've shared so far.
I'll jump right in. So I was prepared to come to this meeting and kind of give you my opinion on where I thought it'd be for next school year, and this was a happy surprise when I got it myself early this afternoon. I'm in line with everything that's proposed there. I think early April is a reasonable time. I think we will probably see a little bit of a spike after spring break, and I think having at least a week of that to see how that averages out on the 7-day rolling average, and then we don't get a November type spike is wise. And it also gives not only the district but parents and teachers the opportunity to plan for what that looks like. And as I understand it correctly, when we make that change to 4 days is what we're proposing, that there is no more hybrid anymore. It is you're fully here or you're fully remote.
Yeah.
Okay, because that would be near impossible for teachers to try and do 3 different things when it's hard enough to do 2. So I think I'm good with that. I think we ought to tell the public what date we're going to publish those plans, if that's going to be this coming Monday or the following Monday, whenever it is, so they have the opportunity to plan. We should give them a date that when that's going to be posted on the website and communicated. But other than that, it was great news. I have a lot of school clients that I work with, and I probably had 5 texts and 3 emails from people that said, guess what? Good news. So, yeah, that's all positive. So that's where I'm at. I'm comfortable with that. I was prepared to say, let's go to 3 to 6 feet in the fall, even if the CDC hadn't and the IDPH hadn't come up with that, just based on where our numbers are right now. So I'm glad that we actually have some clear guidance, and it lowers liability issues for the district as well.
Yeah, I would echo full agreement with what Steve just said. I mean, I know that there's a lot of us that would love 5-day to be an option, but hearing from the teachers, hearing from the staff, hearing from the community, I think this is definitely the best path for us to test things out this spring, because it's going to allow us to keep teaching the remote learners the way that we have, hopefully get, more people, some more FaceTime, some more SEL type learning experience. But I think, perhaps most importantly, it's going to help us test the impact of that 3-foot spacing as far as contact tracing and isolation goes, and give us a flavor, at least over the last, remaining 6-7 weeks of school, as to what that looks like and how disruptive it can be. Because that is my fear for the fall. If we go to 3 feet, which, I mean, I want to, the options we're looking at really are 5-day in person, just like it was, and a remote option. But we need to understand how disruptive that contact tracing could be. And I think if we see major disturbances in the final 6 weeks, that could help inform maybe some changes for the fall that I think would be very instrumental. So I'm very, very excited that we're going to get to test this out, that the kids are going to get back in school more. Hopefully the impact to teachers is minimal, and I'd love to hear from them in the coming meetings, if they have additional concerns that we should be considering. But very thankful for today's guidance and for your guys' work in the background making this all happen.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's important to know that the real controlling factor here is parents and students making sure they're following the rules, the other rules that have to stay in place so that we can continue to do this. Now, that they're going to be the biggest player in that, and teachers as well, but I'm confident that they'll do that. So you just have to be vigilant, as you said.
I'd echo the same thing that you both have said. I mean, I think it's all pretty well said, but I guess logistically, as we start talking through this and we're throwing out, maybe the beginning of April and things like that, I don't believe we have another board meeting on the agenda through March, right?
16th.
Through 16th?
Mm-hmm.
It's a Zoom.
Oh,
There's a special.
I'll be there. I don't look at my schedule that far out. All right, so then we'll at least be able to have time to, I guess, talk about this again, have a full concrete, here's what's going on in this day and all that other stuff, and that would then be out to the community well in enough time for maybe the first week of April, early April, something like that, right?
The return to learn plan that's been published on the website, I think, has been really helpful, and the link to ask questions has been really helpful. So what I would recommend is that give us a chance to finalize the plan, get it published. Sure. I'd like to say end of this week, but I'm going to say it's probably more likely early next week. Get it published, get it out there, give parents an opportunity to start considering designation changes. But really, one of the things that I would recommend is that we kind of start watching that feedback as it comes in. If there's confusion, if we're not clear enough, if there are questions, I would say that maybe a special meeting might be in order, or waiting until that meeting in April. At the same time, when we published the plan and started receiving questions, really there were 3 or 4 themes that were kind of recurring, and most of those were addressed in the plan. We did make some revisions based on that. But really, I think if what we're hearing is that the plan is clear enough, I would recommend that we implement it as soon as we're ready and move forward.
Agree. And I don't think you can overestimate those designation changes. I mean, I know just today, my wife's a teacher. She has 16 students she was notified today that are going from remote to hybrid. And that's just without this news. So that's going to impact what the teachers have to prepare for and a number of things for the district. So you can't underestimate that.
Yeah, sure. I guess the thing I forgot to reiterate that you said is I do agree that we need to establish as soon as possible what that deadline is going to be, at least as far as when parents are going to have to make that designation, when the plan's going to be out, and when we're going to start it, only because I know we heard a lot early on this school year about the needs of parents and their work schedules, that many of them have to give notice, a month in advance if they're going to be changing their hours to accommodate things. So I want us to have something that we're held to, that we say by next Tuesday we're going to have an outline of it posted to the site. By March 24th you're going to have to make your designation change, and if we have to say our implementation will either be week 1 or week 2 of April, but the sooner we can commit to a fixed timeline for our own accountability and for the public to plan around is going to be better.
I totally agree.
Hey, Steve, can you touch on just some of a few of the details and why you just can't snap your fingers, and why we can't go 4 days starting, tomorrow? Just so I can understand kind of what that looks like on your side.
Sure. So as we look to the fall for a full return, we can start to predict what we think is going to happen, and there's still a lot of question marks, as that conversation, continued. Really, until we got the guidance and knew exactly what the guidance was going to say, some of those are question marks that are still kind of hanging out there. Because this came literally, I'm going to say 11th hour, it was 11th hour this morning, but it was 11th hour. Really, there was a lot of scrambling, and what does this mean? How do we interpret this? It's easy for us to say those things, but I know that our attorneys, school attorneys across the state are interpreting the language. It's not always as clear-cut as we would like, so we need some help interpreting that, then applying that to our situation here in Sycamore. And again, I think one of the big pieces is schools, whether it's all the elementary schools or the middle school or the high school, have developed plans, and not complete yet, but have developed plans that that we can start to think about implementing. But transportation is a really good example. So the high school, we don't bus high school students necessarily apart from middle school and elementary. How we transport high school has to kind of mesh with how we do that with middle school, how we do that with elementary school. We still have to look at staffing. Is the spacing in all of our classrooms, is that going to give us the 3 feet that we think it's going to? That was a consistent message today that I heard, is that we thought we could do that. But until we really have a chance to not only go into the classrooms, but start to add some of the furniture that was removed back into the classrooms, and really start kind of measuring that out. Are we confident that we can make that 3 feet of space work? All at the same time, we're still implementing a hybrid model. Kids are coming and going. We have these designation changes that were kind of in process, and the transition from this week to March 15th on Monday. So there are a lot of pieces that just have to be tied down, and I feel very confident that we can have that done by the beginning of next week and get that announced to the public. That's one of the big pieces. Again, I think the other one, and I had a conversation with Jim about this earlier today, is that I think we just owe it to parents to give them that opportunity to reconsider, now that things have changed, am I still comfortable sending my child to school? I've received a lot of emails over the last couple of weeks that have, parents have told me, I'm really comfortable with 6 feet, and I'm really comfortable with 2 days a week. I want my son or daughter to get out. I want them to be around other students. I want them to have that contact with the teacher. But if it's going to go to 3 feet and the number of students in the class is going to, increase, maybe double, I'm not so sure that I'm okay with that, especially if that's 4 days a week. So I think that's the other piece, and Eric kind of touched on this, just being cognizant of parents' needs and families' needs, just giving them that time to consider what the plan looks like, and then make a decision about what they want to do for their student or students, depending on where they're at. So just a lot of moving pieces, and we've thought a lot about what that's going to look like in the fall, kind of hoping that the guidance would change between now and then. All at once it changed, and now we've got to finalize all those things and have those final conversations. And there's always some things that you don't predict that are going to come up. And I think this meeting tomorrow will really be helpful in having some coordination across the district. The entire administrative team will be there. It's just a complicated process, and we want to do our best to make sure that we're adhering to the guidelines and that we're ready to go. And the other piece that I haven't mentioned, I need to, is to involve the teachers and make sure that they're aware of what the plan looks like, but also in terms of instructional materials. Some of the instruction, some of the content has been hit on during asynchronous sessions throughout the school year that now is going to be done live. And it's not that we don't have that curriculum, it's not that we don't have those resources, but we've been using them differently for many months, and now we're going to have to kind of integrate them into the classroom. So there's just a lot of moving pieces that we need to coordinate to make that happen. I would have loved to, like you said, snap our fingers and be ready to go on Monday, but we want to make sure that we do this right and that we're ready to go, and that parents have an opportunity to make the decision for their students.
No, and I appreciate that. Thank you for painting that picture, because I think myself and a lot of people don't really understand all the moving parts that are truly involved in the district and why you can't do it just instantaneously. And it would be nice if we had a little more, notice by ISB as well when we change these things, other than a few hours before a board meeting. So yes. I appreciate you covering as much as you can tonight in such short order.
Sure.
Well done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Glad to do it. This was good news, so I was glad to do
really
it.
Really good news.
If I can add two more things, Steve. One that you just brought up, talking about parents and their comfortableness or uncomfortableness, as it were, with the 3 feet. I know there are some references and studies that IDPH and ISB do point to in their guidance today. I was wondering if we could add that to our return to learn plan, as far as FAQs, for those parents who may feel uncomfortable, at least providing them access to some resources that may support both ISB's decision, IDPH's decision, our decision on that. The second, I guess, goes to Jeff's question. And logistically, I know one of the things that we've been talking about in recent weeks was how to handle the dining situation. And looking through their guidance today, they're very clear. If you're eating, your mask is off, you have to maintain 6 feet. So we're kind of right back to, well, we can't do it in the classroom. If our classrooms are configured for 3 feet, we can't get all the elementary, classrooms and high school classrooms through the cafeteria, because of course their class times are all about the same. I was curious if there was if you had an idea right now as to what the solution to that is. The only thing that really comes to mind right now is maybe if the elementary kids, for example, are eating in the classroom and you've got every other one with their mask off, then they're still, unmasked kids are still 6 feet apart and eating, and then the other half of the class eats after that. But I was curious if you guys had a solution for that one.
You know, I know that looks a little bit different at every level, elementary, middle school, high school, and I'd rather not speak to that, at least quite yet, because that is going to be a challenge. We're able to get students a little bit closer together in the classroom, but lunchroom is still a different story because students are unmasking. So, you know, I feel like we're up to the challenge, but I'd rather have some time to chat with the admin team about that and then make that part of the return to learn plan that we publish.
And I have to say, I feel a little bit lighter because I feel like this thing that's been hanging over us is kind of, we're getting there. We're getting to where we need to be. And you need to understand, people that are listening, everyone on this board wants the children and the staff back in school. And I'm just really happy to hear what's happening. However, I also want the community and everyone to remember, because before I left home tonight, I had a family member call who is from LaSalle, Peru. That's my alma mater. And they've had to close the high school because all of a sudden the cases that they were back in school and the cases they were having like a small pandemic within the school. So they've had to close for a week or two. So I think I'm really excited. I want everything to get back, but I think we have to remember that things, and you put it on here, any positive case in our school could have broad implications. I think we all need to understand that it's not going to be smooth sailing from now on. There are going to be ups and downs, and school may not be in session for one building or however it's going to work. So I really want people to understand that it's not a perfect plan, but it's going in the right direction, and there are going to be bumps in the road. So thank you for all the work that you all are doing, but you know, I really want everyone to understand it's not going to be, you know, smooth sailing the whole time.
Yeah, and there is IDPH, I noticed, had added a section where you can see school outbreaks now by county and see exactly how many schools are impacted, so that's a good point.
Right.
Are you able to talk about length of day? Or are you not comfortable doing that yet?
The preliminary conversation is that the length of day is probably going to be very similar to what we're going to implement on Monday. So high school, middle school would be essentially a full day, elementary, not quite a full day, for a couple of different reasons. First of all, staffing considerations. That would require, the easiest fix there would be adding our specials back to the day. But those special staff have been really critical in serving as internal substitute teachers, supervisors during the day. We're going to continue to look at ways to increase special time, but right now we really need them to be doing other things. The other piece is that remote learning piece. So that Friday is critical. That part of what teachers do, especially at the elementary school, but across the district, what they do on Friday is support remote learners, but there's also some meetings that happen, planning, preparation. So that extra time at the end of the day, elementary day, does still provide time for elementary teachers to contact and support remote learners. So I don't want this to be etched in stone quite yet, but my preliminary response is that the length of day, that Monday through Thursday, is probably going to look similar. We may need to tweak it a little bit, but I think it's going to look pretty similar to what we're going to implement next week.
So if I could be so bold to just say, so is our hope that by fall, the guidance is even more relaxed so that we get our specials teachers back doing what they're supposed to be doing so the day can become more quote unquote normal?
The ideal situation in the fall is full days, every school, 5 days a week. That's what we're planning for. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we've talked about this year that we've not been able to implement is what we've referred to kind of internally as a remote academy. So in other words, a student who opts for remote would have a teacher who just works with remote students. That would free up our other staff to just work with our students who are in person, and that may help us go a long way towards freeing up those specialist teachers, lengthening the school day. Classroom teachers who are working with in-person students wouldn't necessarily need that remote support time at the end of the day. So the goal, absolutely, is full days, 5 days a week in the fall, and that's part of the full return that's going to continue to be planned for that we're not going to implement quite yet this spring.
I appreciate that. I know that many people have struggled, as I have, understanding what the difference is between now and fall, thinking that it's more guidance, but it isn't always about that. It's because we have 30% of our students that have chosen to be taught remotely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think something that's different about the fall is that there appears to be funding on the horizon
Yes.
for this kind of a program.
Right.
So that will help us immensely. If we don't have that funding, it's going to be difficult to go in that direction.
Yeah.
Another piece of the puzzle that we really haven't talked about that I think is going to impact just the way we shape things is transportation. So we're going to have to be figuring out how that enters in to length of days and maybe staggered times or whatever we're going to have to do to get that all to work too. So, as Jeff was saying, there's just a lot of moving pieces that a lot of hurdles that have really kind of been reduced a little bit by the biggest hurdle, but yet we still have to get all those things to work smoothly together. So it does take a little time to get that all in order.
Yeah.
Other comments or questions? Okay, we'll move along then to audience participation. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the board this evening? Just as a prefatory comment here, we have implemented a new timer, so you'll be able to see that timer as you're speaking. If you are going to cede any of your time to another speaker, we ask that that speaker be immediately behind you. If there's several people who are going to cede their time to one speaker, we ask that you line up so that the time kind of passes as the line does to a final speaker. Don't cede your time to somebody who's 15 places behind you. That will make it easier for our timekeeper. So, without any further ado.
I don't even know.
I'm sorry, before you start.
Oh, it's you. I'm like, I don't know who's talking, sorry.
Okay, one other thing is, if you're going to cede time to another speaker, but you're talking during your time, the time that gets ceded to the next speaker will be truncated because of the time you used. So it wouldn't be the whole 3 minutes, it'll be whatever's left of your 3 minutes after you're done speaking to the board. So, okay, now with that in mind, I hope we can go forward. So if you would state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
My name is Jennifer Crouch, and I'm glad you guys shared all that. This is going to be pretty passionate. It might be a little bit different now, but I'm going to start by saying that I don't want to be here. I don't enjoy public speaking, nor do I want to worry about someone treating my children a certain way as a result of me speaking to you guys. It was my surprise that my photo became the face of the petition online this week. While I didn't create the petition, I appreciate whoever did. It was well thought out, respectful, and exactly what Sycamore families need. I had to speak again and share that I will continue to fight with everyone until. To the K through 12 students of Sycamore schools, part of my apology was that I don't feel like everybody was doing their part to get them back this year. So I'm changing that part to say we have 2 months to go, and I'm glad to hear we're not going to waste that. It's heartbreaking to hear parents, teachers, and students pour their souls out begging and pleading, and for it to be like there's nothing else you can do. It's not true. I hear a lot of fears and excuses with all due respect, but schools like Genoa Kingston, Park Ridge Niles, Morrison, Elmhurst, Rochelle, Erie, Princeton, Stillman have figured out a way to go 5 days. And we're not asking Sycamore to recreate the wheel, simply mirror a school that's already doing it successfully and repeat. Parents are offering help, ideas, cooperation. I'm sorry to everyone that the private schools and daycares figured it out. And my biggest apology goes to all the students, brothers and sisters dealing with hybrid and e-learning, checking on their siblings while learning themselves. The youngsters have no business being online all day. Everyone is missing assignments, looking forward to Fridays where asynchronous work is done in 2 hours, and not quite caring completely. Students are feeling pressured, stressed out, overwhelmed, missing their friends. They feel alone and sad and abnormal. But know this, students, because I know you're listening, your parents love you. They want what's best for you, and they don't mean to be hard on you. Your teachers want you to learn and succeed. Everyone is just feeling defeated because what we're doing isn't working. The majority of residents want this, and in America, our vote matters. We're supposed to believe that it's coming together, and it's nice to hear that it is. But we've got your back, students, and we're gonna keep fighting until the vaccines are done, and this is where I crossed off some of my stuff here. I brought up last time that there should be a waiver, and I hear lawyer talk and fears and all this other stuff, but sign a waiver. I didn't see something that said that we'll sign it to say, hey, we're ready to go back. And I'm not here to have anybody be upset with me. I'm here fighting for my children and their future, and I'm always gonna do that. So if anybody feels a certain kind of way, the accountability is on you guys to do what you're supposed to do. And we're gonna keep fighting until. Thanks.
I ask you to please refrain from any support or negative comments. Thank you.
Am I good to go? Yeah, okay, sorry. Hi there, my name is Vanessa Lichkoff, and I'm a senior here at Sycamore High School. We all know that this year has been extremely difficult on everyone and have all suffered in many ways. However, I'm here to be a voice for not only my senior class, but all the students in our community and stress how we've suffered and continue to do so. Not only have us students missed out on memorable experiences with our peers that we will never get back, but we have missed out on one of the things that we need most in life, contact learning. At this time last year, I was ending my junior year with lost memories such as prom, ACT testing, and college visits. We were going through the motions of what was to come for us in August. And here we are, 3 months until graduation, as I continued to learn through a screen 3 out of the 5 days of the week. As a hybrid A student, that means I'm in class Mondays and Wednesdays. On those days, I feel great about myself and that I'm actually learning. However, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, the information that I retained the day before is lost. I have multiple friends in every grade that feel the same as I do, even though our motivation is off track due to the lack of learning. That's why I feel we need to be back 4 to 5 days a week. I need this interaction to grow as a student for when I move forward onto college in less than 5 months. As you know, us seniors are on borrowed time, having only gotten 2.7 years of our high school experience. That's a lot of lost learning. When I try to learn from home, I don't. I'm alone, and there is no interaction with my teacher because they are usually focused on the kids that are actually sitting in their classroom. With the new schedule being implemented on March 15th, I'm very confused. Explain how an hour of a Spartan stretch and a 30-minute lunch is going to help me grow as a student. If anything, that time needs to be added to my classes. I feel it kind of hypocritical why we wouldn't do 4 to 5 shorter days instead of 2 longer days, and adding a lunch period that's highly unnecessary. Furthermore, with no recognition from the administration towards the class of 2021, I am hurt and feel forgotten. Forgotten is the Friday night lights. Forgotten is our spirited pep rallies. Forgotten is hearing the slam of lockers after each period. Forgotten is filled hallways, classrooms, and parking lots. Forgotten is Sycamore Spartan spirit. We are all missing days that we will never get back. It might not sound important to you, but it is to us. I know everyone in this room had the opportunity to sit at a graduation with the kids they grew up with for 12 plus years. I won't get that, nor will I ever sit in a classroom with 30 kids or walk in the halls with everyone and see a smiling face which is now covered by a piece of fabric. We continue to wear our masks and continue to abide by social distancing rules. That is why I'm very frustrated seeing not only surrounding states, but surrounding districts that are making this work. With 3 months left until my days as a Sycamore Spartan are over, all I ask is to put forth as much effort as us kids are trying for you. That's why I'm standing before you today, and it's time to make up for lost time and finish this year as strong as we can. Thank you.
Again, I'm going to ask you to please refrain from any outbursts either in support or against speakers. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tori Clausens. I live at 1222 Townsend Street, and I'm yielding my minutes to Colette Montani.
My name is Amanda Anderson. I live in Heron Creek. I'm also yielding my minutes to Colette Montani.
My name is Lucy Lunn, and I am yielding my time to Colette as well.
Hi, I'm Colette. I probably won't need that much time after all the announcements that were made.
We should reset it should be 12 minutes.
Good? Yes? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to be wearing a couple of hats tonight while I speak. The first is to present the board with the return to full-time in-person learning petition that was created in the last couple of weeks, as I know that each board member has received and was emailed. It can also be viewed on change.org. I also have a printed copy if anybody would like to take a look at that. As of today, before this meeting, there were 574 signatures from parents, students, grades 9 and up, taxpayers, and community members. I'm going to start with some comments from Dawn Marshall, as she was not able to be here tonight, but she was a huge force, mainly the main force behind this petition. Things that she wanted to be added to tonight's meeting was she was happy with the progress that the district has made with extending the school day, as well as getting the staff who chose to be vaccinated the opportunity to become fully vaccinated as of tonight. However, it is all of our hopes that we can and must forge ahead and use the time that we have left this school year to our fullest advantage, as it sounds like we're trying to do. We are and have submitted the petition to open Sycamore School District 427 for 5-day in-person instruction. As I stated, there are 574 signatures to present for your consideration on this matter. Mr. Wilder's video stated that we all want our students back in person full-time as soon as we can. The question remains, what constitutes as soon as we can? As we know, the guidelines have been relaxed as of today, but there are still a lot of questions that remain to be seen what the answers are going to be. Such as, the 3-foot states that it's for fully vaccinated teachers and staff. So we don't know how that's going to affect the students and the other district. The other part of that is, let's see. Sorry, a lot of this gets, we feel that a major priority to getting the kids back to school should be focused on in-school learning, not so much the extracurriculars and the sporting events. While we know that that is important to our students' mental health, and I also take sports for my students very seriously, the main focus should be classroom learning, as I think we all want it to be. The next is going to be from the Cerny family, who also emailed her comments, but she wanted me to touch on just a couple of her key points. The main one being that we are hoping to have a plan and a dedicated date of April 19th at the latest to begin in-person full-time learning. That is stated in the petition. We are asking that this be a positive call to action with suggestions for change as well as next steps. The last thing that she wanted was to provide a statistic stating that we cannot wait any longer. For the age group of 13 to 18, there was a 333.9% increase in intentional self-harm reports from medical claims, which is marked the highest rate in any region in any month of 2020, according to the Fair Health Study, Forbes, March 3rd, 2021. The social, emotional, and academic damage already done is profound. Now I'm going to change gears and I'm going to talk myself. I would like to start by saying that if you have been on the Sycamore School District website, then chances are good that at the very least you have seen this next sentence. The district's motto here at 427 states, empowering all learners to succeed. I am honestly not sure who we are empowering at this time. The next, and what I feel to be the more powerful and the one that I keep personally going back to, is the district's vision statement. And it states this: Sycamore's learning community's vision is to provide an ideal learning experience where students and staff are engaged and want to come back the next day. If I could ask you all to keep those statements in mind while I read the speech that my daughter had prepared to read for tonight, I'm going to read it for her, as she was somewhat hesitant for some repercussions from teachers, which I find ridiculous. Mia Montani. Hi, my name is Mia Montani. I am a sophomore at Sycamore High School, and I wanted to say a few things on behalf of the student body. I have been at the high school now for almost 2 years. However, I have only completed 1 semester as a full-time in-person student. Full-time student, face-to-face instructions, as well as all that goes with it as far as the social aspect goes. I obviously cannot speak for all students, but for myself, I have no motivation left, and I am completely drained. When I started high school last year, I was so excited for the new experience. My grades were good, I completed my homework, studied for tests, engaged in the classroom, studied day and night for my first ever finals, which I might say I succeeded at. I cannot say the same for myself this year. I sit with my camera off during my remote days, as do most of my other classmates. I try to be interested, but school currently doesn't feel like it's teaching us anything. It is more just busy work on days that we are at home. I want my freshman year and so far my sophomore year back. I realize that is not possible. I'm watching my friends and my sister last year leave this school heartbroken and at all they have lost out on, and all that anyone here can say is that we are sorry. But what I want to know is, are you? Honestly, lately it doesn't feel like it. If you were, you would have been trying to figure out a way to get us back in the classroom and make the best out of a bad situation. There are still things that can be done to help us in the last few months we have left in this school. Please put us back in school, not for a lunch period or an extra study hall, with only a few extra minutes being added to our core classes. Teachers keep telling us that we should be happy with this change and that this is what our parents were fighting for. I can assure you that is not what my mom was fighting for me and my brother the last few months. You are acting like you are doing the students a favor with the extended day. Put us back in the classroom, even if it is only a 4-day week until 12:50. That still gives teachers time to assist remote students and leaves Fridays for planning days. This will greatly increase our classroom in-person learning time. E-learning is not working. I can imagine that if you compared students' grades from last year versus this year, you would see that to be true for most of us. Without failure, you cannot succeed. I know that, but don't you think that we have failed long enough? Give us a new plan. We students want to be back to full-time students again. I realize that when my time is up, or my mom's time, you will say thank you, but will you actually consider anything that I have said? Please imagine your own children begging you to listen to them, telling you their happiness is fading, and all they want is to be back in school. Would you then take them seriously? Would there be change? You can sit there with all of the power to do something, but ask yourself if you know really what a student goes through here in the district on a daily basis, just to feel like they're treading water, always feeling like they are failing themselves, their parents, their teachers, the community, and their chances at getting into college dwindling. Parents are fighting for us the best way that they know how. They see us struggle daily, but now we need you, the board, to see us. Remember, this is me now. So remember how I asked you to remember those visions and motto statements? After listening to what my daughter had to say, please empower them to succeed. Help them to be eager to want to come back to school the next day. Thank you.
Thank you.
All set? Amanda Bradbury, 137 Bryan Street. I feel like I bring
Can
a
you step closer to the microphone?
Better? I feel like I bring a broad spectrum to this whole situation. There's 4 children in my household, and we span from the grade school, 2 in the junior high, 1 in the high school. I'm also a firefighter paramedic that I've been doing that for 18 years, and I work in a large suburban department, seen a lot of medical issues, more psychological issues now than I have COVID. I'm also a designated infection control officer. I've been doing that since 2006. I took a refresher course in September when all this COVID stuff started, so I'm pretty well versed on everything along the lines of transmission of the disease. At this point, I've seen more of a mental and psychological aspect with my children in the household, along with all the other children that I've come across in my job and on a personal basis. It's far outweighing the benefit of them being at home doing e-learning. It's gotta stop. And I'm not agreeing with you only seeing these guidelines this morning that it just came from IDPH, because I have seen them back December 1st of 2020 from the CDC. They've been there and they're still there. You guys, I don't feel, have done your due diligence to go through and look at these guidelines and start implementing these things. Because what we're doing now is not working. You give them Chromebooks, so they're doing e-learning, but you're not stopping them from going over to YouTube or all these other sites that's not school related. They're not learning. They're having a lot of psychological issues, and I feel like we're gonna see the effects of this from years and years to come. I'm an alumni of this district, and I'm very, very disappointed to see the direction of the education in this school district. I came back here when I had kids to have them raised in the district that I was raised in. It was an excellent school when I was here, and quite frankly, Mrs. Davey was my guidance counselor in high school, and she was the one that guided me into the career that I'm in now, which I would have never gone to on my own. So I'm really, really disappointed to see the direction that the board is going right now, and I feel like you guys are capable of so much more. I feel like you're letting the students in the district down, as well as the parents. There's a lot of data out there from the CDC, and I don't think anybody's looking at that accurately. We're looking at the percentages and DeKalb County's percentages of the positive cases. We're not looking at Sycamore. You need to take Sycamore into account, the positive cases here, and there's 5 items that we're already doing. They're layered mitigation guidances that have been coming from the CDC. We're doing that. We're doing all of those 5 layers of mitigation, and that the vaccine is now of 6th layer.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tyler Sunny, and I am in 4th grade and go to Southeast School. I wish to give my extra time to Cheryl Sunny in case she needs it, and she is my mom. If we don't go back to school soon, my parents are going to send me to private school. I'd rather stay at Southeast, and you can make that happen. Make the right decision for us kids. We should be back in school 5 days a week. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm sure that's fine right where it's at. Hi, my name is Cheryl Sunny. I live in Reston Ponds. I have a 4th and 5th grader that attends Southeast School. My husband and I moved to Sycamore for the schools. I obviously agreed to make the move, however, now I question my decision. I love the Sycamore community, but if other districts can figure this out, then so can we. Borrow their ideas if that's what you need to do. I don't care what you do, but try and make it happen. My kids used to love school. They still like school. I've said some of this before, but I'm going to say it again. They should not have to sit behind a Chromebook to attend school for a couple days out of the week. For this reason, we have considered registering them for private school, obviously like he said, or even picking up and moving to another district that has more of an in-person learning plan in place. With what was said earlier in the meeting, I'm happy that we are moving kind of forward in that direction and want to thank you for that. But we're not there yet, and we should be. When we did a walkthrough of a private school and it came to the time for the kids to ask any questions they had for that school personnel, all my son's questions he asked were regarding their math program. He's in Walk to Learn and doesn't want to fall behind. He's 9 years old, and that should not be one of his worries. My kids have loved every single one of their teachers, and their teachers have been amazing through this. My kids love school on the days that they go in person. On the days they don't, I am asked if they have to go to school. And I tell them, yes, you do, and you should do your best, which they always do. But that question should not even come up because these kids should be in school in person. This is where I differ from some parents. on the topic of having an option for full remote learning. If parents choose not to send their children to public school for whatever reason, before all of this, those parents would opt for private school or homeschool. Everyone has their own opinion and comfort level and has to do what's right for their family. If full remote is an option, then have teachers dedicated solely to that. With that being said, I feel kids need to be in school more than just once or twice a week. My kids were very excited when they learned that some of their classmates' parents had opted to change from remote to hybrid. Will there be bumps in the road? There might be. There might not be. We don't know unless we try. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't start me yet with the microphone. Hello, I'm Elizabeth Lundeen. I live on Somonauk Street. Thank you for your time. And I do want to give a caveat. I know nothing about being on a school board. I know nothing about running a school district. And I do respect all of your hard work, your time away from your family, your dedication to the school district. I do want to bring up, because it's been said several times before, that my husband and I had to go through a massive emotional discernment last year when we were deciding to pull our kids from one of the amazing, incredible private schools that we do have in this district. So shout out to St. Mary's. But the bottom line came down to opportunity. And my 3 daughters deserve the most opportunity that they can be afforded to them. And we heard over and over again how great the school district was. And ultimately, as I was crying, I did it. I pulled my kids from their family, their home, and moved them into the public school. Never did I think that we would be here talking about this today. My time is running out. So that is me as a mom. I am a public school educator in Kane County. So I want to bring some charges, some observations to whoever's on the school board for next year. I did ask Mr. Lundeen if I could run for the school board, and he said, no way, it's a thankless job. But again, thank you for your dedication. I feel like we were completely unprepared for remote learning in any facet. We've got to do better. The parallel, the hybrid with the teachers doing remote teaching, God bless them, because they are working so hard. I don't know how they teach kids in the classroom and online, and then also juggle the remote students. That's got to change. I'm not sure that the board administration had a clear understanding of what the teachers thought that they could handle for this year. I'm very concerned as a public school educator about the lack of professional development, getting us ready for 21st century learning. Did we bring in outside trainers to work on Web 2.0 tools? I heard 2 weeks ago the teachers didn't even have training on how to use Google. Do we have Google certified educators in this district? Are those opportunities being afforded to them on the school district's pocketbook? That's got to change. We need social workers and counselors to deal with that pendulum that's swinging back towards us. We've got to make up for lost time. The board members next year, you've got to figure out how we can get more subs, paraprofessionals, and virtual teachers. Take care of your teachers now. Let them know how much you appreciate them. And my time is up, so I will finish in an email another time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Eddie Rosecrans. I have 2 daughters at North School here in Sycamore. And I have a lot of concern. I have concern because I see lack of leadership from the board. I have concern because I see lack of support for the students that attend this district. I sit here tonight in disgust, listening to the discourse that occurs up here on the stage. There's a lot of talk about statistics. There's talks about what IDPH will allow. And if we look back at the facts, educators are supposed to teach facts, so you should look at the facts. Look at the facts of how the disease is communicated. Look at the facts of the lack of diseases that we actually have, no flu, no common cold, those things. Let's educate ourselves before we make rash decisions. These kids deserve opportunity. Not once tonight did I hear anybody speak about the kids' opportunity. I hear you speak about rules that you think you have to follow. I don't hear anybody making a sound decision based on facts. I don't see leadership. Our kids are in these schools. They're looking at their teachers, administration, people for leadership to be a role model for them for their growth. There is no growth. You speak of community all night. Community comes out of everybody's mouth. These kids don't know what community is. You already stripped them of that. Community is people coming together, building strength. I don't see that. I see a bunch of people pouring out false information, propaganda, not facts. It's disturbing. I suggest people sit down, go research, do your facts. I work in healthcare facilities, hospitals, in highly dangerous positions. I'm a plumber. I rebuild pipes with feces coming out of them from COVID units. Not once has any healthcare official come and said, well, we can't do that. That's too dangerous. People need to research facts, not recite propaganda that they hear that is passed for some political agenda. Please do your diligence, because you have some precious lives in your hands that you can make an impact on. And so far, you have not done that. You've had 365 days to come up with something. And now we talk maybe in the fall. I don't see anybody making a concerned effort to make sure that we can press forward and protect these kids. That's what your job is. That's why you're here. That's why you were elected. Please do your work. Give them some guidance. They deserve it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Kristen Miller. My husband Scott and I live in Ruston Ponds, and we have 3 boys. One's a freshman and 2 are in 6th grade, and we lived here for 13 years. I have to admit that speaking tonight feels a little bit like spitting in the ocean, but I think it's important for messages of community and positive, proactive communication to continue to be heard. Mr. Davey made that point last week, and I really want to uphold that sentiment. Emotions are so high, and it's really upsetting. I'm bothered by seeing outstanding teachers defending the love of their work. 55.4% of surveyed SEA members have thought of leaving this profession. Who's going to teach my kids? Not me. Excuse me. I'm bothered by the stories of friends who have children who are struggling, and by many I don't know who are hurting as well. I think our boys are frankly in the minority. They've done really, really well, despite having, not seeing their friends as much as they want to, no sports, no activities they love, and the longest winter of any of our lives. They've done okay. But I think part of the reason is that we're still smarter than them, so we can actually help them with school. But I really worry about what's coming next. So the news today is outstanding, but this year's been exhausting. We have to find a way to bring everybody together to understand the big picture. Please put together a plan now that considers all the factors. Science matters, math matters, the vaccine matters, social distance obviously matters, space matters. A lot of these schools are tiny and have small spaces. Budget matters, the availability of in-person teachers matters, a plan for remote learners matters. We cannot ask these teachers to do another year of parallel learning because catching up our kids matters. The availability of substitutes matters. Mental health of kids, parents, and caregivers matters. At the end of the day, a plan and how you communicate it to the community matters. You have a website that specifically addresses the Return to Learn plan. Can you share all the angles? I think more details are infinitely better at this point. Share all the lanes. What's optimistic, what's realistic, and what's conservative. I think having all of that information out there and understanding that it can change on a dime is better. Thanks for the steps that you've taken to make the hybrid. We are starting somewhere. We have hybrid learning day longer. We know the 4 days a week. That's all good news today. It's not a simple issue. It took us a year to get here, and while COVID numbers are on the decline, we know it's not going away. But please continue to share your perspectives, share deadlines, as many of you have said, aspirational, realistic, and conservative, because getting our kids back to school matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, we'll move on then to communications, correspondence, and informational items. Letters and newsletters. There were many. FOIA requests. All responded to. Committee reports.
No planning and zoning this month.
You want me to take it? Chris and I met with the finance subcommittee last week with Nicole and Steve and Nick and talked about a variety of the issues that we're looking at for the budget for next year. I'll touch on some, and Chris, if you want to chime in, go ahead. One was looking at that new additional funding that's supposed to be coming in as part of the, I forget what acronym they're using now for this round, but I think it was to the tune of like $1.1 million, something like that. I think that we expressed that our viewpoint as the board was that we wanted to hire as many staff as were necessary to make this plan work, and we didn't want to be the last ones out there in the hiring pool, so we would definitely err on the side of maybe even encroaching on the budget for next year if it meant having enough personnel to make sure that whatever plan we get into place succeeds. Talked about some of the other projects that are facing the schools that are pretty insignificant from a budgetary standpoint as far as, fixing roofs and stuff like that. But I don't know, Chris, is there something I'm missing?
About transportation.
Yes, a couple of buses that need to be replaced also to help on the transportation side. But I think the biggest component, as it is every year, is personnel and making sure that we've got enough to make the plan work. So
Yeah, it definitely was the focus of the conversation and took up the most time. And I think you're correct, Eric. I think both of us expressed a few times in a few different ways how much we want every penny to go to getting our kids back into a classroom.
Well, thank you both. Any other committee reports? Move on then to Assistant Superintendent for Business Services report.
Thanks, Jim. I have a couple items on the agenda tonight, the first two being second readings. So the first one is approval of our fiscal year 22 student fees. So again, just as a reminder, there's no recommended changes for next school year, and so I would ask the board to approve that tonight.
Is there a motion to approve student fees for fiscal year 22 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call. Oh, discussion? Sorry. Roll call.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Wren?
Yes.
Shiloh?
Yes.
Davy?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Dombeck?
Yes.
Motion carried.
The next item would be building use fees. Hopefully, we can start to get some renters back into our building. Looking at that maybe midsummer, hopefully beginning of the school year. So again, we just had a couple of changes here utilizing those big boards that we have on our football field. So again, this is second reading, so I'd ask for an approval tonight.
Is there a motion to approve the fiscal year 22 building use fees as proposed?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Roll call?
Nelson?
Yes.
Wren?
Yes.
Shiloh?
Yes.
Davy? Yes. Jacobson?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Dombeck?
Yes.
Motion carried.
And the last item I have tonight is a resolution to abate our working cash fund. We successfully closed on our 2021 bids to the tune of about $19.8 million on February 23rd. And so the next step to be able to utilize those dollars is to abate them to operations and maintenance fund. So that's what this resolution does tonight. And then within that, that also authorizes myself to make transfers to the capital projects fund. So once we start getting those expenses in, then I will move that money and pay those out of the capital projects fund. So this is something we've done in the past. So I would ask for the board to approve that resolution tonight.
Is Is there a motion to approve the resolution abating the working cash fund of the school district as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? This is part of the plan that we put in place when we sold those bonds, so. Any questions or concerns? Roll call?
Rin,
Yes.
Shiloh,
Yes.
Davy,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes?
Tom Beck.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Anything else?
That's it?
Thank you. Superintendent's report.
Excuse me. I want to start, as we usually do, just reminding everybody of the mission. This was discussed earlier. Our vision, also discussed earlier, and mentions wanting students and staff to be engaged and want to come back the next day. Our core values, honesty, trustworthiness, integrity, equality, empathy, respect, citizenship, digital citizenship, responsibility, and collaboration. A lot of collaboration went on this afternoon, that's for sure. And then professional learning communities, the 5 questions that our PLCs ask and discuss. What do we want students to know and learn? What do students want to know and learn? How will we know if they've learned it? What will we do if they don't learn it? And what do we do if they already know it? And with that, I'm actually going to pass things off to Mr. Clavin and his team from the middle school to give the board and the community an update on how things have gone at Sycamore Middle School this year.
Good evening.
Good evening. Welcome.
We'll start off tonight with a quote from Dr. Joe Sanfilippo, Superintendent of Fall Creek School District, Fall Creek, Wisconsin. He recently tweeted, "You will see teachers find opportunities to connect with kids in a way that you never thought possible. Don't get out of their way. Stand next to them and make sure they understand their impact." You'll see that through this presentation and quite a few photos. And the first 3 to show you right there, for examples, are Mr. Lang with our 7th grade science project, one of our murals that is painted by Mrs. Katz and Miss Mesrel, and then SMS Live obstacle course that they had some costumes they put on, so that's some of our staff there. Now to our return to learning update that will start Monday. We added real close to 2 hours of time to starting Monday. It'll all go into actual classes. So our classes will now be within about 2 minutes of a normal day. So that'll be very, very good. They'll be 40 to 41 minutes long. We'll start at 7:50. We'll go to 2:40. We'll still open the doors at 7:30, just like we've been doing all year. We will have a 30-minute lunch, but we already had a 30-minute time in there. I think it was 28, now it's 30 minutes. Lunches will still be somewhat of a challenge. We're just trying to get, at this time, 140 kids through there. With the new plan coming up, we may have to get 300. So we'll figure out how we're going to do it. So one thing we do is we find ways to make things work. Students will still get free lunches for the rest of the year. They will have several hot lunch options. We will take tables and desks to make sure that we have the proper social distancing. With the new plan, we had 70 additional kids decide to come back to hybrid, so that was pretty big numbers. As Mr. Nelson mentioned, his wife had a few in her class, but we do have 70 of them that we are checking the rosters out to make sure we have classroom sizes for them and whether we have to get more desks in. Most of our sections are still at about 15, so we should be all right. Our upcoming assessments, we have to do the MAP. We'll be doing that in March and April. Possible to do the IAR in May, and then we still have the Essential 5 survey to be done. The students will actually do that here in March. We haven't gotten our parents to take the Essential 5 survey. We haven't had enough of them take it so we can actually see what they have to say in several years. We're at about 6%. We need 20% to actually get that information. So I do ask the parents if they get a chance to do the Essential 5 survey for us, because it would really help us to know what they had to say. Some of our successes: Chromebook distribution, parallel teaching, staying connected, clubs and activities, our amazing staff, and then using data. You'll see pictures on all of these things coming up. Our one picture right there is our G-Force Club with our supervisors, Mrs. Goodowitz and Mrs. Peterson, receiving their SEF check from a week or so ago with Mrs. Holtz from SEF. So thank you to the SEF for that grant. That'll be used to buy robots and some coding sets. Chromebook distribution. We were waiting a long time this year to get these in, and they finally came in. So thank you to the tech department, custodians, office staff, because we took 883 new Chromebooks. We collected all the Chromebooks we had already out. We've got those all taken care of, cleaned up, and distributed back to the elementary so they would have them. February 1st, we gave them out to our hybrid A kids. February 2nd was hybrid B. At the same time, we were doing school pictures, so they were a couple of very busy days, and all of our remote kids could come in on either day, get their Chromebooks, and get their pictures taken. So there are a few pictures of the process. We used the hallway between the library and the lockers there, stored them in there, and that's where they came and picked up their computers. Our parallel teaching in action. We have photos here of Mrs. Tady's class, 7th grade language arts. We have Mrs. Wright in a 6th grade math class there in the middle, and Mr. Hames with an 8th grade science. All those classes are very much hands-on, and the students really do enjoy being in the class. Staying connected, that has been a real challenge and something that I thought we've done very well with. We have theme Thursdays. We have our SMS Live attendance challenges, the newsletters, which I send to you guys probably every other week, our Artist of the Week, and then our Steam Light. There's pictures there. The one picture of us all wearing pink, that was one of our themes, was to wear pink one day. So we got a photo from up on the roof. The other one was the SMS challenge, attendance challenge. They did the bean boozled. They had to take jelly beans, and I don't know if you've ever had some of those very tasty jelly beans, but they didn't know if they were getting the regular tasting one or one of the flavors that came out. And the students actually pick what we do, and it's filmed live for them, so it's really helped out build the attendance at the middle school. We do find teachers that volunteer to take this, so they've done quite a few different challenges, but that was the one from that picture. Our Steam Light students that are nominated there, and then we also have the picture of the newsletters. Clubs and activities, there are several of them listed there. We will show pictures coming up here of those. That one, the picture there is of the jazz strings. Then we have pictures of our volleyball, art club down there in the bottom left, G-Force in the middle, Scholastic Bowl where they did tryouts in the cafeteria, and then we have the sci-fi club there in the bottom right. We also have our spelling bee on February 19th. We had students come in who wanted to do the spelling bee, and they had their contest there for the school, and we had our winners there. First place was Evelyn Irwin, second place Kyle Preble, and they will actually compete in the countywide spelling bee, which will be held here in the high school on March 13th, so we wish them the best. The far right picture are our ILMEA winners. Normally this is the meeting that we bring all these students here and give them medals. I mailed them home to them, so they all did get their medal, but we just didn't get to have them to the meeting, but congratulations to them. That brings us to our SMS superstars, our staff. Top left is Mr. Moore and the ABLE students. They have actually been in school 5 days a week for most of the year. I think they started in September or October. They're there all the time. And then the bottom left is a couple of our staff members, Mr. Drennan and Mrs. Katz, in their costumes doing the SMS challenge, the obstacle course. Then in the middle is Mr. Augenbaugh. He's our maintenance man. He's Mr. Everything for us. If you know Rob, he treats the school as if it's his own, and he's a great asset to our school. Then our PE staff over there dressed up for Spartan, so we wanted to get a picture of them in there. Using data to improve and grow. These are 3 of our committees that meet weekly. The BLT, Building Leadership Team, they meet and work on the school improvement plan, our building goals, and our grading practices. Our MTSS meets on the student data, attendance, grades, SEL. They're also the ones that put together our SMS Live for the attendance. So our PLC Coalition does the newsletters that you get, staff wellness, building culture, and then they did a Spartan chat via Twitter the other day, I think it was last Friday. We have a picture there of our school counselors. They have been very, very busy this year. The 2 counselors and the 2 social workers do a lot with the SEL. And then some of our bulletin boards that we have through the school. If you ever get a chance to go over and see our bulletin boards, they do a very nice job with them through the school. We've had to find new ways to do things differently this year. So this is a picture of our cafeteria where those tables used to hold probably 8 people. Now they hold 2. The larger tables will hold 3 if we keep them socially distanced. We have down in the bottom left, that was Mrs. Tanaki's virtual workshop with a guest speaker, Taylor Morris, came in to help the kids in the workshop. We have lunches for pickup the last day of each week for the A and the B kids. They can come through, grab milk, a gallon of milk, and then one of those bags of food which will last them over the weekend. We have a picture of our Spartan News, socially distanced, and a picture of Mrs. Peck's class. So, on March 13th, 2020, the SM world froze. I was one of 2 people that could still go into the middle school after that date, and I would go in daily to pick up books, materials, technology for the teachers so they could actually teach their classes. I would take them home with me. I would put them on my front porch. They would come and pick it up. As I walked the halls for the next 4 months, it was very dark and quiet. It was also decorated green. There was St. Patty's Day was right before that. So everything was decorated for 4 months. Now I see the decorations starting to come back out, and I'm not sure I will ever look at this day the same way. I used to really like St. Patty's Day. I hope I get back to that. But I do get a weird feeling now when I see those decorations. The SMS staff had to learn how to do school in a completely different way. There was no training, no one to ask how. They just did it. They banded together. They got good at it. And then we changed the rules. We went to parallel hybrid. Started all over. Again, they did it. They banded together. They got good at it. Now we are looking to change again. The staff has been doubted, criticized, persecuted in the court of public opinion, but through all of it, I've never been more proud of them than what I am now. They take challenges head on, and they find a way to succeed together. I hear people say that our students are going to be behind when we get back. I'm not sure how true this is, but if it is true, it won't be because of the effort of the SMS staff. They put in a lot of time. I cannot go out in that cafeteria when it's off hours and not see students in there. There are teachers, they're working with counselors, with teachers, they're working with club sponsors, they're working with coaches. There are students there at all times. They come in on Fridays, they come in on Saturdays. So all I can say is, bring on the next challenge. We will be ready. Together, we Spartan. Questions?
Can you speak to any issues that you've seen as far as student-to-student interaction during online classes? I heard some potential rumors about maybe some online bullying or people intercepting other people's logins or guessing other logins. And can you just speak to, I mean, we usually get the suspension report in a normal year. Is there been an increase in maybe online bullying or any other abuses of online remote systems in this world?
I would say we've had no more, I mean, we probably had less problems this year than we've had in normal, but that's because we don't have 900 students in the school. I'm sure there are problems. I mean, there are going to be problems in every year, but Mr. Drennan deals with them. I don't think the numbers are up for online bullying. Our numbers are down for face-to-face bullying. That may, we may change around a little bit and start to see more when the students now come back. The students have been great. They really like to see each other. So they've been very well behaved. We've had some problems with like the Google Hangouts. We've turned that off just because you give them too much free time on their own, and so we've turned that off. But other than that, I have not seen a ton of extra online stuff.
Thanks for a really positive, uplifting presentation, and thank you for thanking the staff, because I know from what you've all said,
Yes.
principals, it's great to give them the props they really need, so thank you for that.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yeah, Jim, when you go back, really take our gratitude to the staff, to you and as administrators as well over there, but to the teaching staff too. And I think your comments really have rung true in the sense that we understand that they've been thrown a lot of curves this year, and are in uncharted territory, and yet they still continue to perform. In terms of being persecuted in the field of public opinion, as board members, we can relate to that, and sure. We understand. But I do want them to understand, and sometimes this gets lost in our conversations, I do want them to understand that as a board, we really appreciate how hard they're working, and not just at the middle school, but across the district. But since you're here and you can take this message back to your staff, please take that message back to them, and please let them know that they're greatly appreciated, and we appreciate their cooperation with all the things that have been thrown at them. And we really are all striving to do our best. Whether or not people believe that's true or not, I don't know, but I think deep in our hearts we all feel like we're doing the best for our students. And your presentation shows that we're making some progress. Is it ideal? No, we all know that. But we're hopeful that as we go forward, the promise is out there for us to do better and to get back to where we were, and maybe I think to excel from where we were, to learn from what this adversity has impacted, how this adversity has impacted us. So thank them for us, because I am afraid that sometimes in these discourses and the dialogues and the discussions, that gets lost.
I will. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clavin. And this takes me to a Return to Learn update, I think, part two. Part two. We called this earlier. So some of this stuff I've talked about before, so I don't want to belabor it. The Return to Learn plan was published. We talked about the frequently asked questions section. Health metrics look good. Talk about those a little bit more in a second. Vaccine allocation has improved in our county, so we're seeing those clinics kind of ramp back up to where they were before. The doses were down for a while, but they are getting close to where they were before, so that's good news. This is data as of this afternoon. Seeing the numbers go up slightly in terms of test positivity, and I don't think this has a pointer on it, and if it does, I'm not sure that I want to get myself in the eye. But March 2nd, fourth row from the bottom, the test positivity kind of spiked there at 11.4%. You take that day out and kind of refigure those numbers, and we're probably pretty close to where we've been. So I would expect in the next couple of days, as that day works its way out of the 7-day rolling average, we're probably still going to be in that 2 to lower 2 percentage points. just kind of a graph of that data as well. This tends to be about a week behind, but you can still see that we're still way under that 8% line. Number of cases went up. Again, I think that has to do with that day, March 2nd. But again, the trend has been on a downward slide since November. That's a good thing. Talked about these earlier, so I'm going to skip forward. There are some things that I want to touch on. So some other, I think, good news. Our health staff is prepared to begin offering rapid tests for students as early as next week. These are optional. They will require parent or guardian approval. So if a student presents symptoms, that's how we use that. It's not a screener. We don't give it to all students, and it's offered. It's not required. It's optional. So much like we've been doing with the staff, and this really came from the health staff. You know, they had a conversation about it and really came to consensus that we were ready to start offering that to students. So as the rapid tests have helped us to keep staff in the building and minimize staffing issues, this will help us to give parents at least one other option to keep their students in school. So students who present symptoms can be tested. There may still be situations where our health staff advises parents to take them to get to see the doctor after all. But if they're presenting symptoms, we test them. It is an opportunity for us to clear them and under some circumstances get them right back into class, as long as it's safe and we can rule out other illnesses like flu or something else. So we're excited about that. Could start as early as next week. So the last shipment of Chromebooks is shipped. These are kindergarten and first grade
somewhere out there.
Chromebooks.
Do they
Ask
still use
Roxanne
Chromebooks now?
Where are they? They don't know where they're at. They don't know where they're at, but they have shipped. So we don't know how close they are. But we've been waiting for this shipment for 10 months now.
Yes.
Yeah, so very, very good news. These Chromebooks are a little bit different than the ones that we received. They have touchscreens, so some of the materials that were needed to manufacture these devices were kind of scarce for a while. They're manufactured, they're packaged, and they are on their way. So as soon as they get here, they will get the same treatment that the other Chromebooks received. They'll be prepared by our vendor, and then they'll be delivered, and we'll hand them out to students. So we're very excited about that. We have had some conversations, some further conversations about summer school. High school and the middle school have established summer school programs. They're going to proceed with those as normal. I put that in quotations because we are going to have to tweak some things because, whether it's safety guidance and still, making sure, although the guidance today probably changes that a little bit, still going to have to make sure that we're complying with that and kind of looking at things a little bit different. So in the past, summer school has been used, particularly at the high school, for students to get ahead. So to take a class that frees up time in their schedule for the following year. You are going to continue, we are going to look at students who need to catch up a little bit. So it may be credit recovery for a semester-long class. There really is only enough time for students to make up a semester over the summer. So it's going to limit what they can take, but we'll continue to look at that. Information will be forthcoming from the high school and the middle school as they finalize those plans. The difference is that we've not had a K-5 summer school program, at least not in a while. So we've had some conversation about what that might look like. There are a lot of ideas kind of up in the air, getting some consideration. We have a district committee that had a conversation about summer school that involved K-5 administrators. Following that conversation, they're going back and talking with their staff about some of the ideas that we've kicked around. How do we prioritize students? What's the goal? Is it catching students up? Is it re-engaging students who've been unengaged for a while? So that plan at the K-5 level is not complete yet. We're still developing that plan, and as that progresses, of course, we'll let the board know as well as the community. And Oscar, a lot of questions about Oscar right now because summer is right around the corner, and what's that going to look like over the summer and what's that going to look like next year. Summer Oscar will be available to both staff and families. It's going to be wide open to everybody. First come, first served. The new guidance does allow us to expand Oscar a little bit. Oscar still has to follow the same safety guidelines that the school district does. We thought that number was going to be closer to 50, but the new guidance allows us to increase that to 100. We will establish a waiting list, so as sign-up continues, once we hit 100, we'll follow up with those parents and make sure that they, can commit to taking advantage of Oscar. If guidance changes, we'll have a waiting list that we can go back to and start making calls and say, hey, we have room for 20 more, or 25 or 50 more. So Summer Oscar will happen. For families that are interested in that, mark your calendars, Thursday, April 1st at 10 o'clock. I talked with Mrs. Walls this afternoon. Sign-up will begin for Oscar, April 1st. That's not April Fool, that's not a joke. I know it's April Fool's Day, but 10 o'clock in the morning, first come, first served basis. So mark your calendars for that. Mrs. Walls is also planning for a full return to Oscar in the 21-22 school year. So when fall gets here, it will be available not just for staff, but for families as well. So more information will be forthcoming on that. That's the additional information I wanted to share in terms of return to learn. Any questions about that before I move on?
You said on the rapid testing that that'll require permission. Mm-hmm. Is that something that we're going to call, if a student presents, that we're calling the parent, or is that something that could be proactively, when you come back to school, you've already signed the waiver, it's on file, we can test you by just looking it up without having to reach the parent?
Potentially in the fall, especially because of the registration process and the forms that families have to fill out, that would make a lot of sense to allow us to do that. The rapid testing for students is new, so we need to make sure that we're handling it properly in terms of liability and the legal aspect. But our head nurse, Corey Mock, has worked through the protocol. She's developed that. She's given it to David for this year to be published. I don't know that we're in a position to get that from everybody this spring, but when a student does present, just like you mentioned, there's a phone call that goes home. We have your student. These are the symptoms that they're presenting, or the symptom that they are presenting. We have the option to do this. Do you want to pursue it? Again, it won't be required. We're going to need to have that approval process, but Corey has worked through that, and like I said, we could start that as early as next week.
I just want to make sure we have documentation of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And make it as quick a responsible turnaround.
Yeah. Any other questions about anything else?
I did have something. It's not so much a question. It might be considered more future focused, but I'll throw it in so it doesn't conflict with your future focused topic. And it goes back to some of the comments that we got from parents tonight, from people in the past, pointing to our strategic design and I think trying to find areas where I think we are struggling. But I wanted to point out that there's a lot more to that strategic design as well that I feel like we need to highlight that's important as well. And there's several lines about, learners deserve a safe environment where they feel valued, but so do our teachers. And I think it's important that we not lose sight that all of the decisions that have been made this year have also had an eye toward safety as well as they have toward learner success. The other aspect of that is that we are, our main mission is empowering all learners to succeed in their world. And I think we'd like to think that our little school community here, that we can isolate ourselves in a bubble and say everything's rosy and peachy here and we're going to finish out the year as if everything was normal, or have any year like it's normal and then send you off out into the world. But their world has changed. I think we've all experienced that, and for those parents who have children struggling, I truly understand, and I hope that we can help them, but their struggle isn't going to stop here if the world doesn't change as well. They're going to go on to an environment, whether that's a college or a job, that's going to require those same sort of personal helps. They're going to have to be self-motivated. They're going to have to log into that computer at 8:30. My job, I haven't been able to be back in the office since last March. They just opened it up this last week to allow us in person. So I've got to force myself out of bed and, get to work without any external motivation. So I think it's important that we kind of keep that in mind as we look back at our successes and failures over the last year, that everything we're going through and everything the students are going through is something that they're going to experience once they leave here anyway. And all we can do is try and do the best we can to support them here and give them the skills they need to be successful. And I guess that takes me to my future focused, and maybe it's part of the summer school program, maybe it's looking at some way to augment some classes next year, but to try and maybe help those students who did particularly struggle with a remote learning environment. How can we help teach those skills? Is that a failing in our part in the past that we didn't give them the skills to be self-motivated, individualized learners? Is that something that we need to implement in our curriculum going forward that's going to help them? Whether colleges go virtual, I've thought for a long time that the college model lends itself to being more virtual, especially as tuition rates go to 40, 50,000 a year, that at some point they've got to make they got to make a good sell for you to be in the classroom and spend these tens of millions of dollars. So if the world they're going to is now going to be permanently changed with Zoom meetings and everything else, how can we incorporate that into our curriculum so that they can be more successful, in the future when something like this happens?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I'll just touch on that for just a second. I think that remote learning piece, it's the tech piece, being able to use the technology, and then it's the motivation, and you touched on that. And I think that's a really important point. And we're human beings, so sometimes we struggle to motivate ourselves to do whatever it is, to mow the lawn, to wake up for class, to go to work, to do whatever it is. And my experience is that that's always been a struggle to some extent, and we'll continue to need to battle that and support students and help them to come up with strategies to improve. Part of teaching is reeling kids in a little bit and engaging them. But I think that's a really important point and something that we're going to have to continue to work on as the world continues to change and we transition out of COVID. What does the new normal look like? And what can we do to motivate students to engage and do their best? So a really good point.
One more item on the possibly future focused. I'm not sure, Steve, how this fits in, but some parents and some current seniors have expressed concern about what graduation is going to look like this year. And I haven't heard a word on what that's going to look like. Is it going to be the 6 different graduation ceremonies with 50 people or less like we had last year? Is it going to be an outdoor venue? Hopefully something that'll be a little more exciting for these students who worked so hard and have really struggled in many respects, because graduation is such a big deal. It's such a big step. It's such a big transitional piece. So I hope we can hear some kind of plan. I don't need it tonight, but what that's going to look like moving forward for this year. Hopefully something better.
I think it will be, and I've had some ongoing conversation with Mr. Carlson about that. He has a plan currently that would have graduation happen in 2 sessions. Again, we're still talking about large crowds and meeting the guidelines. At least up until today, the plan was 2 graduation sessions in the field house. He had social distancing accounted for. I had seen the plan and I kind of gave him the thumbs up, but we needed to get IDPH, or not IDPH, but the health department to look at it and make sure that they felt it was appropriate as well. To the best of my knowledge, that's where it's at. There's some conversation between high school and the health department. So let me follow up with Mr. Carlson and at least maybe present, what we're looking at in terms of graduation, whether it's approved quite yet or not. But I might also suggest that we look at just kind of senior events in general, whether it's graduation, is there going to be a prom, things like that, just to kind of give not only the board an update, but the community as well. So I'll check in with Mr. Carlson and see if we can do that at an upcoming, maybe the next board meeting.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve. Thanks.
Any other questions about the return to learn or anything else? Maybe I shouldn't have said that last part. I do have one more agenda item that I'm going to transition to, and that's future focused. It doesn't have to do with anything that's come up quite yet from the board, but it does touch on something that Mr. Clavin discussed as part of what is going on at the middle school and really all of our schools. In the past, you might have heard staff or administrators refer to RTI, response to intervention. That's really become multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS. So I just want to kind of touch on this, kind of a refresher, give you some things to think about, but as we move forward, what is this going to look like? How are we using the data? And in a new normal, whatever that looks like, what is MTSS going to look like? So just a couple of reminders. RTI, and this goes back to something I found on the state board website from 2008. So we're talking about 12 years ago. RTI is a general education initiative. It supports monitoring student academic and behavioral progress. So back in 2008, we were talking about not just academics, but the behavioral piece as well. Student needs must be identified and monitored continuously with documented student performance data used to make instructional decisions. Data derived from such monitoring should then inform instructional strategies gauged to enhance success. So the idea is that we are monitoring students, both academically and behaviorally, and we're supporting them with research-based strategies, interventions, and then continuing to monitor their progress to offer more interventions if they continue to struggle, or maybe backing off because they're back at a good point. So you might also hear educators talk about benchmarking and progress monitoring. Benchmarking is something we do for all students using assessments like the Measure of Academic Progress, or MAP, which Mr. Clavin also mentioned. Then we implement a tiered model of support, tier 1, 2, and 3, with research-based interventions for all students. So RTI is not something that's done for a small group of students or just some of our students. It's something that we do for all of our students. And tier 1 support is kind of the day-to-day things that teachers do in the classroom. If students start to struggle, whether it's behaviorally or academic, there are interventions that teachers do, and these are the things that they learn when they're going through their classes, student teaching, or kind of tricks of the trade they pick up along the way that are research-based. So it's for all students, not just a certain group of students. As we recognize that students are struggling, they're not kind of living up to what we think they should be able to do, then we start to implement interventions and then progress monitor. So those can be similar assessments, and it's different at different levels, but we use a similar assessment so we have consistency as well as validity. And this is a graphic, again, pulled this right off of the state website. This is what those 3 tiers look like, and the writing is small, but I do want to point out that all students are in this triangle in the middle. In the green represents tier 1. Typically the bulk of your students, between 80 and 90%, I usually think of that as about 85% of your students are in tier 1. That's what happens in a classroom on a daily basis. Teacher provides instruction. Some of the students pick it up, no problem. Some of them don't. But with just a little bit of an intervention, a follow-up, a couple of clarifying questions, bam, they're right on track and they keep moving. When we try interventions like that and it's not working for students, that's when they would move to tier 2 in that yellow range, typically between 5 and 10% of your students. That's when there may be repeated interventions, or a teacher might pull together a small group of students and provide some additional interventions. That's kind of common to see that, especially in an elementary classroom. So out of 20 or 25 students, a teacher for a reading assessment or a reading activity might pull 3, 4, 5 of those students together. Doesn't mean that they stand out, doesn't mean that other students know that, but because oftentimes, especially in elementary classrooms, teachers are working with different groups all the time. But that's a more targeted intervention in that tier 2. If those interventions aren't productive or not creating the change that we want to see, then students would move to tier 3. So it's typically 1 to 5% of your students. That can be really intensive interventions. Typically one-on-one, it could be done in groups of maybe 2 or 3. At that level, typically by that level, if students are continuing to struggle, that's when we might consider other supports outside of classroom instruction, for example, special education services. And again, we use this rule with academic and behavioral systems. It's got 3 essential components, using that 3-tier model that I just described, using problem-solving method for decision-making. Sometimes it's the classroom teacher, especially with tier 1 interventions, but if students start to struggle and get to tier 2 or tier 3, first of all, it can be a group. Other staff within the school can get involved, whether it's a counselor or an interventionist. But they are using a problem-solving method, and then they're using that for decision-making to support the students. One of the key components of MTSS is integrated data, and again, Mr. Clavin touched on that too. It's constantly reviewing data. Could be map data, could be classroom data, could be observations, could be grades or assignments from assessments from classrooms. It can encompass a wide variety of things, but we're trying to develop the best picture we can of how the students are progressing and what we can do to support them. So that data is an important piece. As I mentioned earlier, RTI transitioned to MTSS a few years ago. MTSS is multi-tiered system of support. The foundation is essentially the same. It does have a new name, and I just want to stress, oftentimes, again, we think that that's just part of the students that fall into MTSS. It's really all of our students in all of our schools. Talked a little bit already about data points. Direct observations can help us understand progress. And this is, so as a former science teacher, the problem-solving aspect of this is really, it makes a lot of sense to me. We recognize that students struggle. We implement an intervention. If that's working, great. We kind of continue to monitor. Maybe they go back to what the other students are doing. If not, we just kind of ramp up that support. So a very scientific approach, in my opinion, to how we support students. If they don't respond to that for whatever reason, we can move them to tier 2 and 3. Can be intervention groups or one-on-one. Again, sometimes MTSS is thought of as a special education initiative, and it really isn't. It can be a stepping stone to special education if we see that students are struggling and not performing. But really, it is separate from special education. And the last slide, MTSS calls for evaluating individual student progress can therefore become challenging as the number of students in a class or classes increases. So typically this is a little bit easier to do at the elementary level because it's one teacher and 25 students for the most part, every day, all day. Students get into middle school and high school, it can be challenging because you only see them for a certain period of the day, 40 minutes, 45 minutes. And you don't have 25 students, you have 100 or 120. It can start to become difficult to track all of those students and then coordinate the interventions, especially when you're talking about a group. So it can be a little bit more challenging. It is a shift in terms of lesson planning in order to make it effective, but it can be done. In fact, one of the stories I usually tell when I'm talking about MTSS is, although I was an 8th grade science teacher when I became an educator, my degree's in chemistry. I was certified to teach in chemistry, and then 8th grade science happened to be the job that was open at the time, and that's where I landed. I would never have thought that differentiating and individualizing instruction would be possible in a chemistry classroom at a high school level. You're talking about doing labs and working with students on chemical equations and you name it. Safety issues, I'll never forget sitting in this high school chemistry classroom and how well orchestrated it was by a veteran teacher who had been implementing that model for years. And I don't want to date myself, but this is a long, long time ago before RTI was really thought of. It requires a shift in thinking. It requires doing things differently. And it can require a lot of planning when you make transitions from kind of traditional ways of doing things to take advantage of new technology or new opportunities. But it's not that it can't be done at any level. So as we continue to move forward and think about RTI, MTSS really, how can we best implement that? Given the changes that have happened, given the technology and given new opportunities, what's that going to look like in the future? So a couple of questions or a couple of things I just added at the end. What does the future hold? Continued individualizing instruction and progress monitoring. I think with technology, it gives us an opportunity to continue to do that. One of the initiatives that Roxanne Horton is working on right now is compliance with SOPA, a new law to protect student privacy. So one of the things she has to do in order to complete that is identify how many different software programs we use. Because every software program we use has to have a form signed by the school district and the vendor that they are protecting student privacy. It's a long story for another meeting, but the list that she brought today that we talked about had 79 different software programs that our teachers are using. And she and I both agreed that's probably not complete. We're probably over the 100 mark.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's just going to continue to escalate as time goes on and new software programs are developed. But apps have been a game changer in terms of software and engaging with students. So I think there's going to be more opportunity to do that, maybe different ways to progress monitor. So, we need to continue to think about how that's going to impact MTSS and what we do. Talked about technology just now. It's ever evolving. It can be more difficult in the upper grades, but it's not impossible. And then the importance is focusing on students and what we can do to help them succeed. And sometimes I think the art of doing MTSS really well is, as educators, just being resilient. Sometimes you work with students and you provide an intervention and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 times and it just doesn't seem to work. But the best educators that we all know keep going with that 6th or that 7th or that 10th or whatever it takes, or collaborating with a colleague or sharing stories and sharing data to continue to look at things from a different angle to reach students. So again, the importance is focusing on students, doing whatever we can to help them succeed, and as time goes on and as we look to the future, we'll need to keep these things in mind, but take advantage of the opportunities that we have as we move forward. So that was the future-focused item for tonight. Any questions or comments?
I don't think so.
When did they change the terminology to MTSS?
I was trying to find that, and then my day got hijacked a little bit, so I couldn't find exactly when that happened. I know it was a couple of years ago, but I didn't find the exact.
I don't remember that.
So, and still, it can be confusing because everybody really still knows it as RTI.
RTI, yeah.
But when you hear MTSS and you see it on a slide, or you hear the administrators or the staff talking about it, it's the same thing.
Is it a challenge for education people that they just have to keep coming up with acronyms?
I'll go back to my
quota each year that they have to come up with?
My conversation with Roxanne, I'll go back to that this morning and talking about SOPA. She started and just rattled off that, in order to be compliant with SOPA, we can work with the SBDCA and the ISA, who's going to help us with the Exhibit A's and this and that. And I said, whoa, time out. I've done this for a while now, but none of that stuff makes sense. So it's like we're always looking for another acronym. You're right.
Yeah. Okay.
That brings me to the end of the superintendent's report, and we can move on to item 9 now.
Open discussion and future agenda items.
I think we covered some of them, which would be senior events at high school. All those probably need to be on a very near agenda.
Yeah, and I'd like to follow up on that parent conversation I had regarding the potential abuses of our online technology systems, at least for students, what we're doing to protect against that. And I guess maybe the bigger question is, what role do we see our technology experiments or implementations this year changing and evolving for next year? What lessons did we learn that are going to change what we do next year? I think if Ed could help present some of that, that would be helpful as well, because I've been told, for example, that kids can't change their own password. So if a bully or friend or anybody gets a hold of their account and guesses what their password is or something like that, that there's no recourse for them to even change that to get it back. And I'd like to know more about.
And we were also told that there would be filters on these Chromebooks and what have you, so kids couldn't go to inappropriate sites. So interesting to see how that's working.
I know that the way the Chromebooks are set up is that they do read through our filtering software, whether they're at home or on our network. I will tell you that creative students can find ways around that. So filtering companies are constantly looking for ways to improve and update their software. But it's a never-ending battle. So that's something that our tech department works on. The changing password, I'll follow up on that too. Generally, as a former building administrator, whenever that happened, and again, I don't want to date myself, this is a couple years ago. Back then it wasn't passwords, it was locker combinations.
Right.
Just don't know how so-and-so got into my locker and whatever. And by the time I got to the bottom of it, was because they used to be friends, so they shared locker combinations, and then they weren't friends, and now they were taking stuff. And so that's not to say that students cannot figure out passwords or other ways around it, but an important question, so I'll follow up with the tech department on that too.
Thank you.
Speaking of Chromebooks, what's our reliability rating? Are they holding up well? Do we have enough of a supply where when they do break down, we can get a new one into somebody's hands right away? Or
Now that the middle school devices have arrived, it's given us a little bit more flexibility. The tech department deserves an unbelievable amount of praise for keeping the machines that we have up and running, especially before the new middle school ones arrived. They were doing everything they could to keep those machines up and running, and at one point I think we were down to like 10 or 11 spares for the entire district. So they just did a phenomenal job of keeping those machines running, fixing them, getting them back out as soon as they could. And when those new middle school devices arrived, it gave them a lot more flexibility. And when this next shipment arrives, it'll be even better. In fact, at that point, we'll be talking about having to get rid of or dispose of technology because it's the most out of date, and we have enough devices that we can start to do that. So they've held up, they've limped along, and there have been times where we've had to order parts and wait a little bit, but they've done a phenomenal job of getting them fixed and back out.
yeah, it would be good to hear at some point from Roxanne and Ed about, just how some of the issues that we've already surfaced and how, how well the Chromebooks are holding up and what the future holds.
Sure.
How, I don't know how we'll have to replace them now or what the schedule will be, but we might have to order years in advance, it seems, so that we can make sure we don't get delays again.
Yeah, we need to consider that, and I know that's been a topic of conversation as we move forward, especially with budget meetings. What's the replacement schedule look like, and what's the years of service? Is it 4? Is it 6 or 7 that we previously thought might be able to happen? So I'll touch base with our tech department and see if we can put a presentation together for the board.
Other items? Future agenda items? Is there a motion to go into executive session for the consideration of matters related to the appointment, employment, or dismissal of personnel, purchase or lease of real estate, negotiations, and imminent litigation?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Shiloh?
Yes.
Davy?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes?
Brent?
Yes.
Dombeck?
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, we'll take a brief moment to go into executive session, and then we'll return for our final votes.
I took notes too.
and the receptionist. Your voice.
Oh, no.
Oh, my God.
Okay?
Yep, that's about right.
All right, we're back in regular session. Is there a motion to approve the personnel report as presented?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call?
Jacobson?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Wren?
Yes.
Shiloh?
Yes.
Davy?
Yes.
Dombeck?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.